The crystalline walls of the Imperial hatchery trembled as another wave of fire erupted from within the isolation chamber. Highkeeper Morpheus stood outside the reinforced barrier. His ancient face twisted in concern as he watched the small dragon hatchling unleash another furious blast at anyone who dared approach. This was not how an emperor dragon's birth was supposed to go. For 300 years, the draconic stellar empire had waited for this egg to hatch. Emperor dragons were born once every few centuries, and each one became a guardian of the realm, a living symbol of power and wisdom. But this hatchling was different. From the moment it broke free from its shell, the creature had attacked everything in sight. Its red-gold scales gleamed like molten metal, and its violet eyes burned with rage that seemed impossible for something so newly born. "We have tried everything, High Keeper," said one of the handlers, backing away from the chamber entrance with fresh burn marks on his uniform. "The telepathic bonding rituals do not work. The calming songs fail. Even the scent of its own egg brings no comfort. It is as if the hatchling trusts nothing and no one." Morpheus nodded slowly. In his 5,000 years of life, he had overseen the hatching of 7 emperor dragons. Never had he witnessed such hostility. The hatchling was powerful beyond measure for its age, already the size of a large earth horse with claws that could tear through steel and flames hot enough to melt stone. If they could not calm it soon, the creature might harm itself in its fury. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered to witness this historic moment. The grand observation deck above the hatchery floor was filled with dignitaries from 100 worlds, all murmuring nervously as they watched the chaos below. Among them was Ambassador Helen Reed, the human representative to the Draconic Empire. She shifted uncomfortably in her formal attire, wishing she had left her 8-year-old son Oliver back on Earth instead of bringing him to this diplomatic event. Oliver Reed sat beside his mother, swinging his legs back and forth in the too large chair. The adults around him spoke in worried tones about tradition and danger and political implications, but Oliver found it all terribly boring. He had been excited to visit an alien planet and see a real dragon hatch, but now all the grown-ups did was stand around and talk while the actual dragon was locked away somewhere he could not see. "Mom, can I go look around?" Oliver whispered, tugging at his mother's sleeve. Helen glanced down at her son, distracted by a conversation with a diplomat from the mineral-rich moons of Titan. "Stay close, Oliver. Do not wander off." Oliver nodded and slipped away from his seat. Nobody noticed the small human boy weaving between clusters of tall aliens heading toward the exit. The observation deck was connected to a maze of corridors, and Oliver had always been good at exploring. Back home, he spent hours in the woods behind his house, befriending stray cats and helping injured birds. His mother said he had a gift with animals, though she worried it would get him into trouble one day. The corridors of the Imperial hatchery were beautiful but confusing. Walls of crystal caught and reflected light in strange ways, making everything shimmer. Oliver followed the sounds of distressed roaring, letting his curiosity guide him deeper into the complex. Security was focused on protecting the VIP guests, and in the chaos of the emergency, one small human child went unnoticed. He rounded a corner and found himself in a vast chamber with a massive reinforced window. Through it, he could see the dragon hatchling. Oliver pressed his face against the transparent barrier, eyes wide with wonder. The creature was magnificent. Its scales caught the light like precious gems, and despite its angry movements, Oliver thought it looked beautiful. The hatchling noticed him. It spun around, violet eyes locking onto the small figure at the window. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. Then the dragon charged, slamming into the barrier with enough force to make the entire structure shudder. Oliver stumbled backward but did not run. Instead, he tilted his head, studying the creature with the same gentle curiosity he gave to frightened animals back home. "You are scared," Oliver said softly, though he knew the dragon could not hear him through the barrier. "That is why you are so angry." He noticed something then. As the hatchling moved, one wing dragged slightly. There was something wrong with it. Oliver walked along the window, trying to get a better look. The dragon followed him, moving parallel on the other side of the glass, still aggressive but now curious about this tiny creature that did not flee. Oliver found a door. It was marked with symbols he could not read, but he understood their meaning from the red color and warning icons. This was an entrance to the isolation chamber. He should not go in there. Every adult would tell him not to. But Oliver looked at the dragon through the window and saw something everyone else had missed. This was not a monster. This was a baby, alone and in pain. He reached for the door panel. To his surprise, it opened. The security systems were designed to keep the dragon in, not to keep people out. The assumption was that no one would be foolish enough to enter. Oliver stepped into the chamber. The hatchling whirled to face him, drawing breath for a fire blast that would reduce the small human to ash. But Oliver did not run. He held up his hands, palms forward, and began to hum. It was a lullaby his mother sang when he could not sleep. A simple melody without words. His voice was small and wavering in the vast chamber, but it was something the dragon had never heard before, something gentle. The hatchling paused, flames dying in its throat, its head tilted, mirroring the gesture Oliver had made earlier. The boy took a slow step forward, still humming. Then another. The dragon could kill him with one swipe of its claws, but something in Oliver's approach was different from all the others. There was no fear in his scent, no aggression in his posture. Just calm curiosity and something the dragon did not understand yet but would later recognize as compassion. Oliver moved close enough to touch the dragon's scales. The creature trembled but did not attack. Up close, Oliver could see the problem clearly now. There was a long shard of eggshell embedded in the joint of the dragon's wing, causing pain with every movement. No wonder the hatchling was so angry. It had been hurt from the moment of birth, and everyone trying to help had only made things worse with their invasive telepathy and grabbing hands. That must hurt a lot, Oliver whispered. He reached out slowly, telegraphing every movement. The dragon watched him with those incredible violet eyes. I can help if you let me. The hatchling made a sound softer than its earlier roars, almost questioning. Oliver took it as permission. With gentle fingers, he grasped the embedded shell shard and pulled it free with one quick motion. The dragon flinched and made a sharp cry, but then its wings stretched out fully for the first time. The relief was immediate. Oliver held out the bloody shard, showing it to the dragon. See, that was the problem. You are okay now. The hatchling moved its head closer, examining the tiny human who had done what no one else could. Then, in a gesture that would be recorded in the histories of a dozen worlds, the dragon lowered its massive head and pressed its snout gently against Oliver's chest. The boy laughed with delight and wrapped his arms around the dragon's head, hugging it like he would hug his dog back home. That was how the guards found them minutes later. Highkeeper Morpheus stood at the chamber entrance, frozen in shock. Ambassador Helen Reed pushed past him, terror and relief warring on her face as she saw her son embracing the most dangerous creature in the known galaxy. The dragon lifted its head at the intrusion, placing itself between Oliver and the newcomers, a clear message of protection. Extraordinary, Morpheus breathed. The hatchling has bonded with a human child. General Rax, commander of the draconic military forces, shoved forward. Impossible. Humans are barely more than primitives. They have no telepathic abilities, no bond magic. This must be some trick, but there was no trick. Oliver stood beside the dragon, one small hand resting on its foreleg, and the creature that had injured a dozen trained handlers was now calm and peaceful. The boy looked up at all the staring adults with a confused expression. He just needed help, Oliver said simply. His wing hurt. Why did nobody help him? 3 days had passed since Oliver removed the shell shard from the dragon hatchling's wing, and the Imperial hatchery had transformed from a place of crisis into a center of scientific fascination. Researchers from every corner of the Draconic Empire crowded the observation rooms, taking notes and running scans as they watched the impossible bond between human child and Emperor Dragon. The hatchling would not eat unless Oliver was present. This fact alone caused endless debates among the dragon scholars. Emperor dragons were supposed to be independent from birth, proud creatures that needed no one. Yet this hatchling cried out whenever the human boy left its sight and refused the finest meats until Oliver returned to sit beside it during meals. Oliver did not understand what all the fuss was about. He simply sat on the chamber floor talking to the dragon like he would talk to any friend. The creature listened with intense focus, its violet eyes tracking every gesture Oliver made. Sometimes the boy would read stories from his datapad, adventure tales about knights and spaceships. Other times he would tell the dragon about Earth, about forests and oceans and the snow that fell in winter. I think you need a name, Oliver said one afternoon, scratching the scales under the dragon's chin. The hatchling made a pleased rumbling sound, leaning into the touch. You cannot just be called hatchling forever. How about Ember? Your scales look like fire embers when the light hits them, right? The dragon responded by wrapping its tail gently around Oliver, a gesture that made the observing scientists gasp and scribble frantic notes. Ember it was then. Ambassador Helen Reed watched her son through the observation window, her feelings a complicated mix of pride and fear. The Draconic Empire had made it clear that Oliver's connection with Ember was unprecedented and valuable, but that value came with danger. Already there had been attempts to separate them, to study what made the bond work. Each time Ember became aggressive again until Oliver returned. "Your son is remarkable," Highkeeper Morpheus said, standing beside Helen. "In 3 days he has achieved what our best handlers could not accomplish in months with previous hatchlings. The bond is real and growing stronger." Helen crossed her arms. "He is 8 years old. He should be in school playing with friends, not stuck in an alien facility bonding with a creature that could accidentally kill him with one wrong move. Yet Ember has not hurt him once, not even a scratch." Morpheus gestured to the chamber below, where Oliver was teaching the dragon to play a simple game with a ball. "The hatchling is careful with your son in a way we have never seen." It is as if Ember understands exactly how fragile humans are. Helen wanted to argue, but she had seen the same thing. Ember used just the tips of its claws when touching Oliver, moved slowly and deliberately around the boy, and adjusted the temperature of its breath so no flames escaped when Oliver was near. The dragon was protecting her son as fiercely as she wanted to protect him herself. Down in the chamber, Oliver threw the ball and Ember bounded after it with enthusiasm that seemed impossible for such a powerful creature. The dragon brought the ball back, dropping it at Oliver's feet with a proud expression. They had been playing this game for an hour, and Ember showed no signs of boredom. "Good dragon," Oliver praised, patting Ember's snout. "You are learning so fast." A door hissed open and General Rax entered the observation room, his expression dark. He had opposed Oliver's involvement from the beginning, viewing humans as inferior beings that had no place in dragon affairs. The fact that a human child had succeeded where dragon experts failed was a source of deep irritation for the general. "This situation cannot continue," Rax announced. "The hatchling must be trained properly according to our traditions. The boy has served his purpose in calming the creature, but now it is time for real bonding protocols." Morpheus turned to face the general, his ancient eyes cold. "Every attempt at traditional bonding has failed. The moment we separate them, Ember returns to its previous aggressive state. We have documented proof. Then we are raising a weak emperor dragon dependent on a human child," Rax snapped. "What happens when the boy must return to Earth? When he grows old and dies in what will be but a blink of time for the dragon? We are setting Ember up for devastating loss." The words hit Helen hard because she had thought the same thing. Humans lived such short lives compared to dragons. Oliver would grow up, grow old, and die while Ember was still in its youth. What would that loss do to a creature so bonded? "Perhaps," Morpheus said quietly, "we should trust that this bond happened for a reason. The universe has strange ways of correcting imbalances. For 300 years that egg waited to hatch. Perhaps it was waiting for Oliver." Before Rax could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Security alerts flashed on every screen, and armed guards rushed through the corridors. Morpheus accessed the security system with quick gestures, his face going pale as he read the reports. "Intruders in the western sector. Multiple armed individuals. They are heading toward the hatchery chamber." Helen's heart stopped. "Oliver!" She ran for the door, but Morpheus caught her arm. "Security will handle this. You must stay here where it is safe." "That is my son down there," Helen snarled, pulling free. She did not care about safety or protocol. She ran. In the hatchery chamber, Oliver heard the alarms but did not understand what they meant. Ember did understand. The dragon's head shot up, nostrils flaring as it scented something wrong on the air. A low growl built in Ember's chest, and the hatchling moved to place itself between Oliver and the chamber's entrance. "What is wrong?" Oliver asked, feeling afraid for the first time since entering this room days ago. The door exploded inward. 3 figures in dark armor burst through the smoke, weapons raised. They were not dragons, but members of a species Oliver did not recognize, with too many arms and eyes that glowed red in the dim light. One of them pointed a device at Oliver. "Target acquired. Grab the human child, they never got the chance." Ember roared with a fury that shook the entire building. The dragon's flames were no longer carefully controlled but unleashed at full power. White-hot fire filled the chamber, and the intruders barely had time to scream before their armor melted. Ember followed the fire with claws and teeth, eliminating the threat with brutal efficiency. Oliver covered his ears against the noise, curled up small against the wall where Ember had pushed him. He squeezed his eyes shut, frightened by the violence but somehow knowing he was safe. When the sounds of combat faded, he opened his eyes to find Ember standing over him, wings spread wide in a protective canopy. The dragon was checking him frantically, sniffing and nudging to make sure Oliver was unharmed. "I am okay," Oliver said, though his voice shook. "You protected me." Ember made a soft crooning sound, wrapping around Oliver completely. The boy hugged the dragon's neck, feeling the rapid beat of Ember's heart gradually slow as the danger passed. Security forces arrived moments later, weapons drawn, but there was nothing left to fight. The 3 intruders were dead, their melted weapons scattered across the scorched floor. Helen burst through the crowd of guards, her face streaked with tears as she grabbed Oliver and pulled him close. "I'm sorry, Mom," Oliver whispered. "I did not mean to cause trouble." "You did nothing wrong, baby," Helen said fiercely. "Nothing." Ember's head lowered to them both, and the dragon made a questioning sound. Without thinking, Helen reached out and touched the dragon's snout, a gesture of gratitude that crossed all species barriers. Ember accepted the touch, recognizing in this human female the same protective instinct the dragon felt for the small male. Highkeeper Morpheus examined the dead intruders, his expression grim. "These are mercenaries from the outer reaches. Someone hired them to kidnap the boy." "Why?" Helen demanded, though she already suspected the answer. "Because Oliver is the key to controlling an emperor dragon," Rax said, entering the chamber last. For once the general looked shaken rather than angry. If a rival empire controlled Oliver, they could potentially control Ember. They could use the strongest dragon in existence as a weapon. The implications settled over everyone like a heavy weight. Oliver was no longer just a boy who had befriended a dragon. He was a strategic asset, a target, and a vulnerability all at once. His life had changed in ways he was too young to fully understand. "We must increase security," Morpheus said, "both for Oliver and Ember. They cannot be separated now, even if we wanted to separate them. The bond has proven itself today. Ember will kill anyone who threatens this child." Oliver looked up at all the serious adult faces around him. Then he looked at Ember, who was still pressed close to him, still ready to fight anything that came through the door. He thought about going home to Earth, about leaving his new friend behind, and the idea made his chest hurt. "I want to stay with Ember," Oliver said quietly. "Please do not make me leave." Helen closed her eyes, knowing she had already lost this argument. Her son had found something rare and precious, a connection that transcended species and logic. She could not take that away from him, no matter how much she wanted to keep him safe. "Then we stay," she said finally. "Both of us. Whatever it takes." 6 weeks had transformed the Imperial hatchery from a place of clinical observation into something resembling a home. Oliver's small room was connected directly to Ember's enlarged chamber, allowing the boy and dragon to see each other at all times. The walls were decorated with Oliver's drawings of Earth animals and spaceships, and Ember had developed a habit of collecting shiny objects to arrange in elaborate patterns, a behavior that delighted the researchers studying dragon intelligence. Oliver sat cross-legged on the floor, working through his daily lessons on a data pad while Ember dozed nearby. The dragon had grown noticeably larger, now the size of a small shuttlecraft, but remained remarkably gentle around the boy. Education specialists from Earth had been brought in to ensure Oliver did not fall behind in his studies, though most of his learning now included subjects like draconic history and interstellar politics that few 8-year-olds ever encountered. The Emperor dragons were created during the first expansion. Oliver read aloud from his history text. Genetically engineered as guardians and peacekeepers. Each dragon is born with enhanced intelligence, the ability to breathe multiple types of energy attacks, and an expected lifespan of over 10,000 years. Ember opened one violet eye, listening. The dragon had begun to understand spoken language with remarkable speed, though it could not yet speak itself. That ability would come with maturity, according to Highkeeper Morpheus. A chime announced a visitor, and Oliver looked up to see Dr. Patricia Lang entering the chamber. She was a human xenobiologist who had spent the past 3 weeks studying Oliver and Ember's bond, trying to understand what made it work, when traditional dragon bonding methods had failed. "Good morning, Oliver." "Good morning, Ember," Patricia said cheerfully. The dragon lifted its head in acknowledgement. I hoped we could run a few more tests today if you are both willing. Oliver had grown used to the tests. They were usually simple things like problem-solving exercises or emotional response measurements. What kind of tests? I want to try something different today. We have been studying why you succeeded where our telepathic species failed, and I think I have finally figured it out. Patricia pulled out a small device that projected holographic images. May I show you? Oliver nodded and Patricia activated the display. It showed a complex web of neural patterns, with different colors representing different types of brain activity. This is a typical telepathic bonding attempt between a dragon handler and a hatchling, Patricia explained. See how the handler's mind tries to connect directly with the dragon's consciousness? It is like trying to merge two computer systems with incompatible programming. The dragon's instincts reject the foreign presence as a potential threat. The hologram shifted to show a different pattern, this one more organic and flowing. This is what happens when you interact with Ember. You do not try to connect telepathically because you cannot. Instead, you communicate through body language, tone of voice, and emotional authenticity. Ember does not feel invaded because you are not trying to access the dragon's mind. You are simply being present and genuine. Oliver tilted his head thinking, so I am good at being friends with Ember because I am just being myself? Exactly, Patricia said, smiling. Telepathic species assume direct mental connection is superior, but for a newly hatched emperor dragon, that directness feels threatening. Your indirect approach using what humans call emotional intelligence creates safety. Ember chooses to bond with you rather than having a bond forced upon the dragon's mind. Ember made a soft sound and nuzzled Oliver's hair, which the boy had learned meant agreement or affection. He scratched behind Ember's jaw ridge, a spot that always made the dragon purr like an enormous cat. There is more, Patricia continued. Humans have something most advanced species have lost through genetic modification and technological enhancement. You have what we call adaptable empathy. You can read emotional states across species barriers without needing telepathy. When you first saw Ember, you did not see a dangerous dragon or a political symbol. You saw a scared baby who needed help. The door chimed again, and this time High Keeper Morpheus entered with Ambassador Helen Reed. Oliver's mother visited every day, though she now held an official position as human liaison to the Dragon Council. The kidnapping attempt had changed everything, making Oliver's bond with Ember a matter of interstellar importance. Oliver, we need to discuss something important, Morpheus said gently. The Dragon Council has made a decision about your future and Ember's training. Oliver felt Ember tense beside him. The dragon was becoming more attuned to emotional currents, picking up on Oliver's sudden anxiety. He placed a reassuring hand on Ember's foreleg. What kind of decision? Oliver asked carefully. Helen knelt down to be at eye level with her son. They want you to help train other young dragons. There are 3 hatchlings who are showing signs of distress similar to what Ember experienced. The handlers think you might be able to help them too. But I am not a dragon trainer, Oliver protested. I just helped Ember because no one else did. That is exactly why you can help, Morpheus said. You do not approach dragons with expectations or traditional methods. You treat them as individuals with unique needs. That perspective is what these troubled hatchlings require. Oliver looked at Ember, who was watching the conversation with keen intelligence. What do you think? Should I try to help other dragons? Ember rumbled thoughtfully, then carefully picked up one of the shiny objects from the collection, a piece of polished crystal, and placed it in Oliver's hand. The gesture was clear even without words. Ember was giving Oliver something precious, trusting him to share their bond with others. Okay, Oliver said. I will try. But Ember comes with me. Of course, Morpheus agreed. We would not separate you. The next day, Oliver and Ember were taken to a different section of the Imperial hatchery, where 3 smaller chambers held the troubled hatchlings. The first was a silver dragon who refused to come out of the corner of its chamber, trembling constantly. The second was green and aggressive, though not as violent as Ember had been. The third was blue and seemed depressed, barely moving even when handlers tried to rouse it. Oliver approached the silver dragon's chamber first, with Ember walking beside him. The presence of another dragon caught the silver hatchling's attention immediately. It lifted its head, eyes wide with fear. Hello, Oliver said softly, settling down outside the chamber barrier. My name is Oliver and this is Ember. We are friends. Would you like to be friends too? The silver dragon did not respond, but it was watching. Oliver simply sat there talking about nothing important, while Ember made occasional gentle sounds. After an hour, the silver dragon crept a little closer. After 2 hours, it was at the barrier, separated from them only by the transparent wall. You are very pretty, Oliver told the silver dragon. Your scales look like starlight. Do you have a name? He glanced at the handler standing nearby. It has not accepted a name, the handler said. It responds to nothing. Oliver thought for a moment. How about whisper? Because you are very quiet and that is okay. Not everyone needs to be loud. The silver dragon whisper blinked slowly. Then it did something remarkable. It pressed its snout against the barrier, exactly where Oliver's hand rested on the other side. Contact even through a wall. Trust, however tentative, the handlers were amazed. Over the following days, Oliver worked with all 3 troubled hatchlings with Ember's help. The green dragon, who Oliver named Forest, was aggressive because it was scared of being confined. Once given access to an outdoor training area, Forest calmed considerably. The blue dragon, named River for its flowing water-like scales, was depressed because it was lonely. Introducing River to the other hatchlings helped the blue dragon find purpose in social connections. Within 2 weeks, all 3 dragons had bonded with their assigned handlers, learning from Oliver's example. The key, everyone realized, was treating each dragon as an individual, rather than following a one-size-fits-all protocol. General Rax observed these successes with a mixture of grudging respect and lingering resentment. Humans were proving valuable to the Empire, which complicated his xenophobic views. But he was not the only one watching Oliver's progress with interest. In a darkened chamber on a ship orbiting Dracon Prime, a figure studied holographic footage of Oliver and Ember. The figure was tall and angular, belonging to a species called the Krell, known for their strategic brilliance and complete lack of empathy. The human child is the key, the Krell commander said. Whoever controls him controls the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. The failed kidnapping was crude. We will need a more sophisticated approach. A subordinate stepped forward. What do you suggest? We do not take the child by force. We make him come to us willingly. The commander smiled, a disturbing expression on Krell features. Every child wants to be a hero. We simply need to create a situation where being a hero requires leaving his dragon behind. Back on Dracon Prime, Oliver was unaware of the conspiracy forming around him. He was too busy teaching Ember to play a new game, one that involved strategic thinking and teamwork. The dragon was learning fast, already able to solve puzzles that would challenge adult humans. You are so smart, Oliver praised, hugging Ember's neck. I am proud of you. Ember nuzzled him gently, and Oliver felt that unique connection they shared, deeper than words or thoughts. It was trust and friendship and something else he did not have a name for yet. Whatever happened, whatever challenges they would face, Oliver knew one thing with absolute certainty. He and Ember would face them together. Rain fell on the training grounds of the Imperial Academy, turning the volcanic soil dark and slick. Oliver, now 8.5 years old, stood in the downpour with his hair plastered to his forehead, watching as Ember practiced aerial maneuvers with 3 other young dragons. The training session had been going for hours, but neither boy nor dragon showed any signs of wanting to stop. Ember had grown enormous over the past 6 months, now rivaling adult dragons in size, though still considered juvenile. The dragon's wings spanned wider than a human house, and when Ember roared, the sound could be heard across the entire capital city. Yet with Oliver, Ember remained as gentle as that first day, careful of every movement when the boy was near. Banking turn, Ember, called out Master Flint, a grizzled dragon trainer who had initially doubted a human child could teach him anything. He had since become one of Oliver's strongest supporters. Control your speed through the curve. Ember adjusted mid-flight, executing the turn with increasing grace. Flying was instinctive for dragons, but precision flying required practice and discipline. Oliver had learned all the training commands and hand signals, effectively serving as Ember's ground support during exercises. Whisper, Forest and River flew alongside Ember, the 4 dragons having formed a close bond. Their handlers stood nearby, working with Oliver to coordinate the training. It had become clear that the young dragons learned best when working together, pushing each other to improve while maintaining their individual strengths. That was perfect, Oliver shouted up at Ember as the dragons landed. He ran forward, heedless of the mud, to greet his friend. Ember lowered a massive head and Oliver pressed his forehead against the dragon's snout. Their customary greeting. Your son has a gift, Master Flint said to Ambassador Helen Reed, who watched from a covered observation post. I have trained dragons for 300 years, and I have never seen one develop this quickly. Ember is already performing maneuvers that should take decades to master. Helen smiled with motherly pride, though worry never left her eyes completely. Oliver had adapted remarkably well to life on Draken Prime, making friends among both humans and aliens, but he was still just a child. She worried about the burden being placed on his young shoulders, the expectations that came with being bonded to an emperor dragon. He is happy, at least, Helen said. That is what matters most. A security officer approached, speaking quietly to Helen. Her expression shifted from content to alarmed in seconds. She excused herself quickly, heading toward the administration building where High Keeper Morpheus waited in his office. What happened? Helen demanded as soon as the door closed behind her. Morpheus looked ancient and tired in a way she had never seen before. We intercepted communications from a Krell battle group. They are planning an attack on the mining colony of Sanctuary Station. 2,000 human workers and their families live there. Helen's blood ran cold. Sanctuary Station was a joint human-dragon operation, one of the key symbols of the alliance between their peoples. When? 3 days. Maybe less. Morpheus pulled up holographic displays showing the station and the approaching Krell forces. The station's defenses are minimal. It was built as a civilian facility, not a military installation. If the Krell attack, it will be a massacre. We need to send military ships immediately. We are, Morpheus assured her. But our nearest fleet is 5 days away. They will not arrive in time. Helen stared at the hologram, her mind racing through possibilities. What about the dragons? Could they reach the station in time? Adult dragons, yes. But the only adult dragons available are currently on diplomatic missions across the Empire. The nearest ones could arrive in 4 days. Morpheus paused, his ancient eyes meeting hers. However, the young dragons training at the academy could reach Sanctuary Station in 2 days if they flew hard. Absolutely not, Helen said immediately. You are talking about sending children into combat. I am talking about saving 2,000 human lives, many of them children as well, Morpheus replied gently. I do not suggest this lightly, Helen, but Ember and the others are nearly combat ready. With their handlers, they could evacuate the station before the Krell arrive. Nearly combat ready is not the same as ready, Helen argued. Oliver is 8 years old. I will not send him into danger. Then 2,000 people will die, and Oliver will spend the rest of his life knowing he could have helped but did not. Morpheus stood, moving to look out the window at the training grounds where Oliver and Ember were still playing in the rain. I have lived a very long time, Helen. I have learned that sometimes children are braver than we give them credit for. Sometimes they must be allowed to become who they are meant to be, even when it terrifies us. Helen wanted to argue more, but she knew he was right. She thought about the families on Sanctuary Station, about children Oliver's age who would die if no one helped them. She thought about her son's face when he talked about Ember, the pure joy and sense of purpose he had found in their bond. Let me talk to Oliver, she said finally. This has to be his choice. That evening, Helen explained the situation to Oliver in simple terms. A place where humans lived was in danger. Ships were coming to help, but they would not arrive in time. Dragons could fly faster and get there sooner, but it would be dangerous. Oliver listened carefully, his young face serious. People will die if we do not help? Yes, Helen said, unable to soften the truth. Then we have to go, Oliver said simply. Ember and me, we can help. Oliver, you could get hurt. The Krell are dangerous. Mom, remember when I was 5 and I found that bird with the broken wing? You said I should leave it alone because it might bite me, but I helped it anyway and it got better. Oliver took his mother's hand. This is the same thing, just bigger. People need help and I can help them. Ember can help them. We have to try. Helen pulled her son into a tight embrace, tears streaming down her face. She was proud and terrified in equal measure. When did you get so brave? I learned it from Ember, Oliver said. Dragons are brave all the time. 2 days later, 4 young dragons and their handlers flew toward Sanctuary Station at speeds that pushed the limits of even dragon endurance. Oliver rode on Ember's back, secured by a specialized harness that High Keeper Morpheus had insisted on. The void of space stretched around them, beautiful and terrifying. Dragons could survive in vacuum for limited periods, creating protective fields of energy that their riders shared. "How are you doing?" Oliver spoke into his helmet communicator, checking on the other handlers. "Forest is strong," came the reply from Forest's handler. "We can maintain this pace." "Whisper is good too," reported another voice. "River is getting tired," said the fourth handler. Concern in their tone, Oliver looked over at River, seeing the blue dragon's wings beginning to labor. "We need to rest. There is an asteroid cluster ahead. We can land there for an hour." They found a stable asteroid large enough to land all four dragons, giving everyone a chance to eat and recover. Oliver shared his rations with Ember, and the dragon curled protectively around him, sharing body heat in the cold of space. "Do you think we can do this?" Oliver asked quietly. Ember made a sound, low and reassuring. The dragon's confidence flowed through their bond, strengthening Oliver's resolve. They had trained for this, even if they had not known what they were training for. They were ready. When they resumed flying, River seemed refreshed, keeping pace with the others. The hours blurred together until finally, a massive structure appeared ahead. Sanctuary Station, a wheel-shaped habitat spinning gently in space, home to thousands of lives that depended on four young dragons and their handlers. "This is Ember Team to Sanctuary Station," Oliver broadcast on the emergency channel. "We are here to help evacuate. Please respond." Static crackled for a moment, then a woman's voice came through, shaking with relief. "Ember Team, this is Station Commander Brooks. Thank God you are here. We have detected the Krell ships. They will arrive in 6 hours. We will get everyone out," Oliver promised, hoping he sounded more confident than he felt. The evacuation was chaos. 2,000 people needed to be organized, given emergency spacesuits, and loaded onto the dragons' backs using hastily rigged harnesses. Oliver coordinated with Ember, who had grown large enough to carry nearly 300 people at once. Whisper, Forest, and River took their shares as well, patient despite the fear scent of the humans they carried. "How many more?" Oliver asked Commander Brooks as the 5th hour approached. 200, all children and elderly," Brooks said. "We are moving as fast as we can." "We have time," Oliver assured her, though his heart raced. The Krell could arrive early. They could be detected and attacked. So many things could go wrong. Ember sensed his fear and sent waves of calm through their bond. The dragon had grown in more than just size over these months. Ember had developed wisdom beyond years, understanding that being strong meant being steady when others were afraid. The last group of evacuees was loaded with 15 minutes to spare. Oliver did a final count, making sure everyone was secure when an alarm blared through his helmet. "Krell ships just entered the system," one of the handlers shouted. "They are moving fast. 6 vessels heavily armed." Go now," Commander Brooks ordered. "Get those people out of here." The 4 dragons launched from the station, their passengers screaming in fear as they accelerated to escape velocity. Behind them, Sanctuary Station grew smaller. Oliver looked back and saw weapons fire begin to tear into the abandoned habitat, destroying what had been a thriving community. But everyone who lived there was safe, carried to freedom on dragon wings. The great plaza of Dracon Prime overflowed with beings from 1,000 worlds, all gathered to witness something that had not occurred in living memory. Oliver stood at the center of the massive crowd, wearing formal robes that felt strange and uncomfortable after months of training clothes. Beside him, Ember towered over the assembled masses, scales gleaming like captured sunlight, violet eyes scanning the crowd with a mixture of pride and nervousness. Today marked Ember's first year of life, which meant the Trial of Flames, an ancient ritual that every Emperor Dragon must face to prove their worth to the Empire. Oliver had learned everything he could about the trial, reading historical accounts and questioning every elder who would speak with him. What he learned had not eased his worry. The Trial of Flames took place in the volcanic arenas of Mount Cinder, a massive natural formation where rivers of lava flowed through carved channels and toxic gases filled the air. Dragons, immune to such hazards, could navigate the environment easily, but humans could not, and traditionally dragons faced the trial alone. High Keeper Morpheus stood at the plaza's center, his voice magically amplified to reach everyone present. For 3,000 years, Emperor Dragons have proven themselves through the Trial of Flames. Each dragon must demonstrate flight mastery, combat readiness, and the ability to stand alone in the face of overwhelming challenges. This is the way of our people. The crowd murmured agreement, but Oliver felt his stomach twist with anxiety. Ember could not stand alone because they were bonded. Separating them now would devastate both dragon and boy. Yet the traditions of the Draconic Empire were sacred, unchangeable laws written in the earliest days of their civilization. However, Morpheus continued, and the crowd fell silent. We face an unprecedented situation. The candidate for today's trial is bonded to a human, a connection that has proven both powerful and unbreakable. The Dragon Council has debated this matter extensively. General Rax stepped forward from the council assembly, his expression stern. He had opposed Oliver's involvement from the beginning, and he saw the trial as an opportunity to prove that human bonds weakened dragons rather than strengthening them. The trial exists to ensure our Emperor dragons are strong, independent, and capable of leading, Rax announced. A dragon that cannot face challenges alone is not worthy of the title Emperor. Therefore, we must conduct this trial in the traditional manner. The dragon goes alone or the dragon fails. Ember growled, a sound that made the ground tremble. Oliver placed a hand on his friend's foreleg, trying to send calm through their bond, though his own heart was breaking. They had known this moment would come, but knowing did not make it easier. Ambassador Helen Reed stood among the human delegation, her face pale. She had argued for days with the Dragon Council, fighting for a compromise that would not destroy her son's bond with Ember. She had failed, and now she could only watch as her 8-year-old child faced a choice no child should have to make. High Keeper Morpheus raised his hand for silence. General Rax speaks for tradition, and tradition has served us well. But I speak for wisdom, which demands we adapt to new realities. The universe has given us something unique in Oliver and Ember's bond. To destroy that bond for the sake of tradition would be to reject a gift we do not fully understand. You would change 3,000 years of protocol for one human child? Rax demanded. I would change anything that no longer serves our empire's best interests, Morpheus replied calmly. The Dragon Council has voted. By a margin of 1 vote, we have decided to allow a modification to the trial. Oliver may accompany Ember into the volcanic arenas. Relief flooded through Oliver so powerfully he felt dizzy. Ember made a happy sound, wings spreading wide in joy. However, Morpheus continued, and Oliver's relief evaporated. Oliver may not interfere with the trial in any way. He cannot help Ember solve the challenges. He cannot touch the dragon during the trial. He may only observe. If he breaks this rule, Ember will be disqualified and forbidden from ever holding the title of Emperor Dragon. Do you both understand and accept these terms? Oliver looked up at Ember, seeing his own uncertainty reflected in those violet eyes. They had never been apart during a challenge before. Everything they did together. Could Ember succeed alone even with Oliver present? We accept, Oliver said, his voice surprisingly steady. The journey to Mount Cinder took 3 hours by aerial transport. Oliver rode with his mother and the other human observers, while Ember flew alongside with the other young dragons who had come to watch. Whisper, Forest, and River called out encouragement to their friend. Their own trial scheduled for the following months. Mount Cinder rose from the planet's surface like a wound in reality, spewing smoke and ash into the atmosphere. The volcanic arenas had been carved into the mountain's side by the first dragons, and they pulsed with heat that made the air shimmer. Oliver could feel the temperature rising even inside the climate-controlled observation platform. You do not have to do this, Helen said quietly, holding Oliver's hand. You could say no. You and Ember could leave, find another life somewhere else. Mom, Ember is an emperor dragon. This is who Ember is supposed to be. I cannot ask my friend to give up everything just because I am scared. Oliver squeezed her hand. I believe in Ember, and Ember believes in me. That is enough. Morpheus approached them, carrying a small device. This will protect you from the heat and toxic atmosphere inside the arena. But Oliver, you must understand that what you will see today will be dangerous. The trial is designed to push dragons to their absolute limits. Some dragons in history have died during the Trial of Flames. Ember will not die, Oliver said with certainty he did not entirely feel. They entered the arena through a massive archway carved with ancient dragon script. Oliver wore the protective suit Morpheus provided, a shimmering energy field that surrounded him in a bubble of breathable air. Ember needed no such protection. walking calmly into the hellish landscape of flowing lava and poisonous gases. The first challenge appeared immediately. The ground beneath them suddenly gave way, revealing a chasm filled with molten rock. Ember spread wings and flew, but the updrafts from the lava were chaotic and unpredictable. The dragon struggled to maintain altitude, wings working frantically against the turbulent air. Oliver watched, desperately wanting to call out advice, but he had promised not to interfere. He could only observe as Ember fought the thermals, learning to read the air currents through trial and error. After several minutes of struggle, Ember found a rhythm, gliding through the chaos with increasing grace. The second challenge was combat. Holographic enemies materialized from the volcanic smoke, projections of ancient dragon predators that had once hunted Ember's ancestors. They were not real, but the trial systems could inflict very real pain if Ember failed to fight them off. The dragon met the attack with flame and claw, moving with the precision that months of training had developed. Oliver noticed something wrong before anyone else. The holographic enemies were not following normal patterns. They were moving too fast, attacking with coordination that should not be possible in a training simulation. His eyes widened in horror as he realized the truth. Someone had sabotaged the trial. The holograms were not just illusions anymore. They were solid constructs, and their attacks were drawing blood from Ember's scales. The dragon roared in pain and confusion, not understanding why the trial had become deadly. Oliver ran forward without thinking, breaking the rules he had promised to follow. He had to reach the control panel he had spotted near the arena's edge, the source of the malfunction, but General Rax appeared, blocking his path. "Stay back, human," Rax commanded. "You will disqualify your dragon if you interfere." "You did this," Oliver accused, seeing the guilt flash across Rax's face. "You sabotaged the trial to hurt Ember." "I made it real," Rax corrected. "A true Emperor dragon should be able to handle real danger, not training simulations. If Ember is as strong as everyone claims, the dragon will survive." Oliver looked at Ember, who was bleeding from multiple wounds, overwhelmed by enemies that would not stop coming. In that moment, Oliver made a choice that would define the rest of his life. He ran. Rax tried to grab him, but Oliver was small and fast, ducking under the general's arms and sprinting toward the control panel. Behind him, he heard his mother screaming his name, heard Morpheus shouting orders, but he did not stop. Ember's life was worth more than any title or tradition. He reached the panel and started pressing commands, having watched technicians work similar systems during training. The holographic enemies flickered and destabilized. In his panic, Oliver hit something he should not have, and suddenly the entire arena's systems went haywire. Lava flows reversed direction, the ground began to shake, and a massive explosion rocked the mountain. Oliver was thrown backward, his protective field failing. He hit the ground hard, the breath knocked from his lungs. Through blurry vision, he saw Ember diving toward him, saw the massive dragon moving faster than ever before. Ember caught Oliver in gentle claws, pulling the boy against a chest that rumbled with distress. The dragon's wings spread wide, creating a protective shelter as the arena collapsed around them. When the dust cleared, Ember and Oliver stood at the center of destruction, surrounded by smoking rubble but alive and together. Highkeeper Morpheus surveyed the damage, his ancient face unreadable. General Rax stood in custody, held by security forces who had discovered his sabotage in the chaos. The trial was supposed to prove Ember's strength, but instead, it had revealed corruption at the highest levels of dragon society. "Oliver broke the rules," one of the council members said. "The dragon must be disqualified." "The trial was invalid from the start due to sabotage," Morpheus countered. "However, we all witnessed something far more important than any test today." He gestured to Ember, who still held Oliver protectively. "We saw an Emperor dragon choose love over pride, friendship over tradition. We saw a human child risk everything to save his friend. These two have proven their bond is not weakness but strength unlike any we have known." The Dragon Council conferred in whispered tones while Oliver caught his breath, and Ember checked him over for injuries. Finally, Morpheus spoke. "Ember passes the trial of flames, and Oliver is granted a new title, Dragon Friend, the first of his kind. May there be many more to follow." Starlight reflected off Ember's scales as the dragon soared through the outer reaches of Draken Prime's atmosphere. Oliver, now 11 years old and nearly 4 feet tall, sat comfortably on Ember's back without needing a harness anymore. 3 years of flying together had taught them perfect synchronization, moving as one being rather than two separate entities. Below them, the capital city glowed with lights from 1,000 species celebrating the Festival of Unity, an annual event that had grown significantly since humans joined the Draconic Empire in full partnership. What had started as a controversial bond between one boy and one dragon had blossomed into a cultural revolution. 23 human children now trained with young dragons across the empire, each pair bringing something unique to the ancient traditions. "We should head back," Oliver said, patting Ember's neck. "Mother will worry if we miss the ceremony." Ember rumbled agreement, though the dragon's thoughts touched Oliver's mind with reluctance. Since passing the trial of flames, Ember had developed the ability to speak, though the dragon still preferred their private mental connection when communicating with Oliver. Flying free was Ember's favorite activity, and formal ceremonies felt constraining to a creature meant to soar. They descended toward the palace landing platforms where High Keeper Morpheus waited, his ancient form now showing visible signs of age. The centuries were finally catching up to him, though his mind remained sharp as ever. "There you are," Morpheus said with fond exasperation. "The ambassadors have been asking for you both. Apparently, it is not a proper Unity festival without the famous dragon friend and his emperor dragon making an appearance." Oliver slid down from Ember's shoulder, landing with practiced ease. He wore formal robes that marked his status as humanity's youngest official representative to the Dragon Council, though he still felt like just Oliver, underneath all the fancy clothing. "Sorry, we are late. Ember wanted to see the nebula one more time before we had to deal with politics all night." "I understand the feeling," Morpheus said, smiling. "But tonight is important, Oliver. There are developments you need to know about." Inside the palace, the Grand Hall was filled with representatives from every species in the known galaxy. Oliver recognized ambassadors from the crystal cities of Lumina, the water worlds of the Aquari system, and even a few cautious delegates from the Krell Empire, who were trying to rebuild diplomatic relations after their failed attack on Sanctuary Station. Ambassador Helen Reed stood near the center of the gathering, deep in conversation with several human officials. She had aged gracefully in the 3 years since coming to Dracon Prime, now one of the most respected diplomats in the Empire. When she saw Oliver, her face lit up with maternal pride that never faded no matter how many important events they attended. "There is my boy," Helen said, embracing him, and Ember, looking magnificent as always. Ember preened slightly at the compliment, having developed a healthy appreciation for praise. The dragon had grown to truly enormous size, now large enough that just Ember's head was bigger than most ground vehicles. Yet with Oliver, Ember remained as gentle as always, careful of every movement around the boy. "Mother," Morpheus said, "there are developments." "What is happening?" Helen's expression grew serious. "We have received a priority distress call from the frontier. A colony ship full of refugees was attacked by an unknown force. They managed to escape into the nebula of lost stars, but their ship is badly damaged and they are trapped. Every government in the sector is sending aid, but none of us know what attacked them." "How many people?" Oliver asked immediately. 3,000. Humans, dragons, and several other species. "Families, Oliver, children." Helen paused. "The descriptions of the attackers match historical records of something we thought was extinct. The Void Swarm." Oliver felt Ember tense beside him, the dragon's instincts reacting to a name that carried weight across millennia. The Void Swarm was nightmare made real, a hive mind species that consumed everything in its path. They had nearly destroyed the galaxy twice before being driven into dark space by the combined might of every civilization thousands of years ago. "If the swarm has returned," Morpheus said quietly, joining their conversation, "then we face a threat that could end all life in the known galaxy. They adapt to every defense, learn from every defeat, and they specifically hunt emperor dragons as their greatest enemies. We have to help those refugees," Oliver said firmly. "We cannot let the swarm kill them." "A rescue fleet is being assembled," Helen explained. "But it will take 3 days to gather enough ships." "Those refugees do not have 3 days. Their life support is failing." Oliver looked up at Ember, seeing his own determination reflected in those violet eyes. They were thinking the same thing, feeling the same pull toward action. Over 3 years, their bond had become so complete that words were often unnecessary. "We can reach them faster than any fleet," Oliver said. "Ember and the other young dragons. We did it before with Sanctuary Station. That was an evacuation of a stable facility, Helen protested. This is a rescue in hostile territory with an active enemy presence. Absolutely not, Oliver. You are 11 years old. And I am the dragon friend, Oliver countered gently. This is what that means, Mother. Ember is an emperor dragon. This is what that means, too. We cannot hide behind our age when people need help. Morpheus studied them both with ancient eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. The boy is right, Helen. The swarm will not wait for us to be ready. If we do not act now, 3,000 lives will be lost, and the swarm will grow stronger from consuming them. Helen looked at her son, seeing not the 8-year-old who had wandered into a dragon hatchery, but a young man who had chosen responsibility over safety time and again. It terrified her, but she also understood she could not stop him. Oliver had found his purpose, and trying to keep him from it would break something essential in who he had become. Then I'm coming with you, Helen said firmly. I will not let you face this alone. Within hours, a strike force assembled unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Ember led the flight with Whisper, Forest, and River following close behind. Other young dragons and their handlers joined them, 12 dragon-human pairs in total. Supporting them were human military pilots and fast fighters and draconic warriors who had trained for centuries in combat against the swarm. Oliver rode Ember at the head of the formation, his mother secured behind him in a specialized saddle. They flew toward the nebula of lost stars, a region of space so thick with cosmic dust and radiation that sensors barely functioned. It was the perfect hiding place for a damaged ship, but also the perfect hunting ground for the Void Swarm. All units maintain formation, Oliver broadcast over the comm system. We are entering the nebula now. Stay alert. The nebula swallowed them like water swallowing stones. Visibility dropped to almost nothing, and Oliver had to rely on Ember's senses to navigate. Dragons could perceive space in ways humans could not, seeing magnetic fields and gravitational currents as clearly as Oliver saw colors. I have got the refugee ship on sensors, reported one of the human pilots. 3 degrees starboard, distance 12 kilometers. But I'm also picking up something else. Multiple contacts surrounding the ship. The swarm, Morpheus said over the command channel. He flew on his own power, one of the few elder dragons who had joined the mission. They are keeping the refugees alive as bait, waiting for rescuers to arrive. This is a trap. Then we spring it carefully, Oliver said, his voice steadier than he felt. Dragon teams split into 3 groups. Group 1 provides cover while Group 2 evacuates the refugees. Group 3 hangs back as reserve. Human fighters, you are our eyes in this soup. Guide us in. They executed the plan with precision born from years of training together. The swarm creatures were horrifying up close, like massive insects made of living darkness, their bodies absorbing light and heat. They attacked in coordinated waves, but the dragons had an advantage the swarm did not expect. Humans brought tactical thinking that confused the hive mind. Instead of meeting the swarm head-on with superior force, which the swarm would adapt to and overcome, the human dragon teams used unpredictable guerrilla tactics. They feinted in one direction and struck from another. They lured swarm forces into ambushes and used the nebula's radiation clouds as weapons, herding enemies into zones that even the swarm could not survive. Oliver coordinated it all from Ember's back, his human creativity combined with Ember's dragon power, creating strategies the swarm's collective intelligence struggled to counter. His mother helped manage communications, relaying orders and keeping track of all teams even as she fought off her terror at watching her son in combat. The refugee ship was a wreck, barely holding together, but its passengers were alive. Dragons landed on the hull and used their strength to tear open sealed hatches, pulling people to safety. Whisper was particularly gentle, using precise control to extract an injured child from collapsed wreckage. Forest and River worked together to stabilize the ship's reactor before it exploded. We have got everyone, reported one of the handlers. All 3,000 accounted for. Let us get out of here. But the swarm had other plans. A massive shape emerged from the depths of the nebula, a creature so large it dwarfed even adult emperor dragons. This was a swarm queen, the living core of the hive mind, commanding thousands of smaller creatures. All units, retreat now, Morpheus commanded. We cannot fight that thing. We must run and hope the fleet arrives before it follows us out of the nebula. Oliver looked at the queen, at the rescued refugees clinging to dragon backs, at his friends and family who would all die if they ran and the Queen chased them down. He thought about his mother's words from years ago, about how sometimes you help even when it is dangerous. He thought about Ember's courage during the trial of flames. Most of all, he thought about those 2,000 people from Sanctuary Station who were alive, because he and Ember had chosen to act instead of waiting for someone else to solve the problem. "Ember and I will hold it here," Oliver said calmly. "Everyone else get the refugees to safety." "Oliver, no!" Helen screamed. "You cannot fight that thing." "We are not going to fight it, Mom. We are going to slow it down. Buy you time to escape. Trust me." Before anyone could argue further, Ember dove toward the Swarm Queen, moving faster than thought. The dragon's flames, burning hotter than stars, carved into the Queen's hide. The massive creature roared and gave chase exactly as Oliver had hoped, away from the fleeing refugees, deeper into the nebula where the radiation was strongest. The battle became a game of cat and mouse through cosmic clouds and radiation storms. Ember was faster and more agile, but the Queen was relentless. Oliver used every trick he had learned, leading the Queen into zones where the nebula's natural radiation hurt it, using asteroids as cover, always staying just out of reach. "The refugees are clear," Morpheus reported over the comm. "Oliver, get out of there now." "Trying," Oliver gasped as Ember banked hard to avoid a strike that would have cut them in half. This thing is not giving up. Then he saw it. A radiation storm building at the nebula's core, so powerful it showed up even through the interference. If they could lure the Queen into that, the storm might hurt it enough to drive it back to dark space. "Ember, we have to go into the storm." The dragon did not hesitate, trusting Oliver completely. They flew toward energy that would kill most creatures instantly, protected only by Ember's natural shielding. The Queen followed, too enraged to notice the danger until it was too late. The radiation storm hit them all like a hammer. Oliver screamed as pain lanced through him, his protective suit overloading. Ember roared and wrapped around Oliver, using the dragon's own body as a shield. The Queen thrashed in the heart of the storm, its hive-mind connection disrupted by the radiation. When the storm passed, Oliver lay unconscious on Ember's back, his suit smoking and damaged. The dragon was badly hurt as well, scales cracked and bleeding, but they were alive and the Queen was retreating, driven back into dark space by the damage it had sustained. The rescue fleet found them drifting at the edge of the nebula, barely alive but victorious. Helen wept as medical teams worked on her son, while dragon healers tended to Ember's wounds. Both would recover, the doctors assured her, though they would carry scars from this day. Oliver woke 3 days later in a hospital bed, his mother asleep in a chair beside him. Through the window, he could see Ember on a platform outside, the dragon having refused to leave even for proper medical treatment. When their eyes met, relief and love flowed between them so powerfully that Oliver started crying. High Keeper Morpheus entered the room, moving slowly with the weight of his years. "The refugees are safe. The Swarm Queen was last seen fleeing toward dark space, possibly destroyed, but we cannot confirm. Because of you and Ember, we saved 3,000 lives and drove back the greatest threat our galaxy has faced in millennia." "Did we win?" Oliver asked weakly. "You bought us time," Morpheus said. "Time to prepare, to build defenses, to train more dragon-human teams. The swarm will return eventually, but thanks to you, we will be ready." He sat beside Helen's sleeping form. "You know what you have done today, Oliver. You have proven that the old ways are not always the best ways. That change is not weakness, but strength. Human-dragon partnerships are now officially recognized as equal to traditional methods. The Empire has entered a new era, and you helped create it." Months later, Oliver stood once again in the Imperial hatchery, watching a new Emperor dragon egg begin to crack. A young human girl named Ruby stood beside him, nervous and excited. She had been chosen from hundreds of applicants to potentially bond with this new dragon, trained by Oliver himself in the methods he had developed. "What if it does not like me?" Ruby asked, twisting her hands together. "Then it does not like you, and we find you a different dragon," Oliver said honestly. "But if you do bond, remember this: be yourself, be kind. Treat the dragon like a friend, not like a weapon or a symbol. That is all you need." The egg cracked fully open and a small golden dragon tumbled out, looking around with curious orange eyes. Ruby knelt down and started humming a lullaby, just as Oliver had taught her. The dragon tilted its head, listening, and took a tentative step toward her. Oliver felt Ember's presence in his mind, warm and proud. Together they had changed the galaxy. one gentle act of kindness at a time. They had proven that strength came in many forms, that tradition could evolve, and that friendship could bridge any gap. As he watched Ruby and the new dragon begin their own bond, Oliver smiled. The future was full of uncertainty. The swarm still lurked in dark space, and countless challenges awaited them all. But they would face those challenges together, humans and dragons as partners and friends. It was enough. It was everything. The new era had truly begun.